Hi there, Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. Today we're looking at my Schefflera Bonsai. This is a dwarf variety. They come in two sizes. You can get a big large leafed one and a smaller leafed one. They're commonly known as the umbrella tree, and they're commonly sold as a house plant, but they do grow into giant trees in nature. I was down at Disney World and I came across one that had a gigantic trunk and was a great big tree. So I'll show you a photo of that. So this tree was started from a 10-gallon nursery container. It had multiple trunks coming out of the pot. It was about this tall. And so the first thing I did was I separated all the trees. The roots were all tangled. They're big fat roots. So I pruned the roots up and separated them. And then I planted them in a sort of a clump style with the branches sort of the trunks spreading outwards. And then I cut the trunks down to about, about this size, and then let them resprout. And I've been doing that every year. These trees are about 15 years old now, and it's been clip and grow as it grows. And so you're starting to get some nice movement in the trunks, starting to get some branching. And yeah, so we'll go in and have a look at this tree and see what we're going to do to it today. So the tree, it was repotted in winter. So this is its first growing season in this pot, which is one of my seed tray pots. And yeah, you can see the trunks. They're getting movement to them. So it's got some nice roots here. There's this is the central trunk in here, or central tree. And what I did last year was I let that grow unrestricted, and it grew about I don't know, about 3 times the height of what it is now. And then in fall I cut it back severely. And so originally, a year ago, that trunk was about the same thickness as this one here. And so I wanted it thicker, so that's why I let it grow out. And now it is the thickest trunk, which is good. It's kind of the focal point of the planting. And so what we're going to do with this tree today, there's several things. One, you can see the canopy is getting quite thick, and also it has quite a mass to the canopy. So instead of, a nice layer of foliage on top, it's getting very thick. So we want to correct that. So we want to bring our canopy down to a reasonable level. And what causes that is all the branches that are growing straight up grow with more vigor than the side branches. So you always get this top growth that's really strong, and the side branches are a little weaker. So we're going to try and equalize that the growth of the tree. So we're going to prune our vertical branches shorter, get some more ramification in them, and keep our side shoots, we probably won't touch them at all. I'm going to spin the tree around because I want to show you the back of the tree. Now, from the front you can see that the leaves at the back of the tree go actually below the level of the pot in some places. And what we want to do is if you have the foliage go all the way behind the tree like that, it gives more of a bushy appearance to the tree rather than a clump of trees in nature. So what we're going to have to do is raise that level of foliage at the back so we can see through the trunks into open air. So I'm going to put the tree on the turntable and we'll spin it around and have a look at it. Okay, so here's the front, and we'll rotate it around. Now you can see some of the new growth in here was getting shaded out and it's gone yellow. So that's another thing. By pruning our top, we're going to get a little more light to some of these side branches that we want to grow. So here's the back of the tree, and you can see it's just a wall of foliage, and that's because it's facing south on the bench in the greenhouse. It gets the most light on this side, so it just grows with vigor. So we're going to raise that up. We'll take a look at that, what's going on. And same with this side. We need to raise our foliage up. With tropical trees, in nature, the sun follows an arc in the sky. And the arc starts in the early morning, hits one side of the tree, and it goes overhead and sets on this side of the tree, for instance. So in tropical trees, you always have a front and a back because the sun follows this curve, so you always get more foliage on that arc of the sun, or left to right and top. And the front and the back are always a little more sparse. So usually in nature you can see into the tree from the front and the back, and the sides are fuller. So it forms that sort of, not an umbrella, but an oval shape. Well, if you view it from the top, it's sort of an oval shape, and from the side it's an arc. So that's, when you're styling a tropical tree, you're kind of going for that look that, keep in mind where the sun goes, and that's going to be the strongest growth of foliage on the tree. And the front and the back of the tree are sparser because they don't get the sun shining in from this direction. Okay, so the first thing on this tree, when you have a forest or a clump of trees, they're always growing and changing. So one thing that's been bothering me is there's a trunk in here that's kind of obscuring the main trunk a bit, and it has a fairly straight section here, and it's not really contributing to the overall design at all. I think it would look better without that trunk there. So I'm thinking we're going to remove that. There is a branch off the main trunk behind that kind of fills that space in. So I think this trunk is just not necessary. It's just kind of cluttering the design with something you don't need. So that's probably the first thing we're going to do, is remove that trunk there. And these will grow great as cuttings. You can either just place them in a glass of water and the roots will grow out, or you can put them straight into a pot with soil. Keep the cutting moist, or lots of humidity and lots of heat, and the roots will grow quite quickly. If you don't have a greenhouse, you can put a plastic bag over the pot and cutting to keep the humidity levels up. Just don't place it in full sun with a bag over it, or you'll get too much heat buildup. So if you place the cutting in a bright area but not direct sunlight, it'll do better, but keep the temperature up. Okay, so like I said, our first step, I'm going to remove that trunk. It's just not in the right place. It's just not doing anything good for the overall design. One thing, when you remove trunks like that, you can kind of check the overall canopy and check and see, if I do remove that trunk, am I going to have a giant hole here? So I'm just going in to look at the foliage, and there is some that's coming up here that will lose. but not a whole lot. And there's lots of other foliage in that area that will fill that space in. So I don't think we're gonna have a giant gap in the canopy, which, you know, isn't really important at this stage in the tree's life, but if you're preparing it for a show or something, it might be something you might consider, that you don't want this giant hole in your canopy just before a show or something. Okay, so let's do that. Let's cut that trunk off. Now, I'm going to cut it off. There is a big root coming out from that trunk. I hope you can see that there. And I have cut one trunk off here before, or a branch, but I'm going to cut it off and try and keep that root. Now, it probably will sprout again, but we'll see. Sometimes these roots, they kind of fuse to the tree beside it and will continue to grow as a root. So we'll just cut it off here and we'll see what happens in the future. If that root were to die, it's quite a crossing root, so it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But it probably won't die. I have a feeling it won't. So let's do that now. Okay, so here we go. We're going to get in here with the pruners and just slice it off. I'm just trying to decide the best angle to get in there. Probably like this. And we can clean this up a little more later on. Here we go. There. So there's what we took out. And you can see that trunk line much more clearly now. And it looks a little less cluttered in there. So yeah, I like it. It's a good move. The next thing, you remember I said that I grew this central tree out unrestricted all last summer, and it really thickened the tree up. So we're going to do that again this summer. So I'm not going to touch any of the foliage or branches on that tree at all. Now, I might remove some of the lower leaves off it just to give a little more light to the surrounding area. But basically, I'm going to let that main tree grow unrestricted this year. And then in fall again, I'll prune it back to its proper size to fit in with the canopy of the tree. So, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to look at some of this this foliage at the back here. We're going to see what's going on here. Right at the back, there's a trunk that's sprouted out of the root base. So it's, I hope you can see that in there. It's just growing out of the soil, and we can prune that right off because we don't need a back branch there or a back trunk. Sometimes they're useful. Let me think here. Do we need one? Maybe we do. Let me look at it from the front. I kind of have to envision, well, what would that look like as it grew out? It would be another trunk at the back, which might not look so bad. Give a little more dimension and depth to the planting. So I'm thinking actually we should probably keep that, and all we'll do is we'll trim off the lower leaves on it, and that'll grow up, and we'll get another trunk at the back. So we'll get rid of the lower leaves on it. And when you prune off the leaves, you can leave the stalk of the leaf attached to the trunk, and it'll dry out and fall off probably in about a week. Here's another leaf here. It'll also make the watering of this tree a little easier because I can get in here with the watering can. I'm going to prune off some more of these lower leaves that are hanging down so we can see what's going on in here. So we're leaving that little shoot that's come out of the soil. We're going to leave that grow. It gets lots of light back there, so. And we're just removing some of these leaves that are hanging down here. They're not getting much light anyway down there. One thing I've noticed, when you do get a full canopy on the tree, because it's always in shade, the main trunks, you do get a lot of aerial roots that grow down out of the trunk. There's a couple here that you can see. I hope you can see that right here. And they just grew. It was growing in full sun. It wasn't in the greenhouse. Full sun, and because that's always shaded and fairly humid in here, they just grew out of the trunk. So we'll probably get a lot more of that happening as the tree gets a little older. Okay, so now on the back side of the tree you can see what's going on a little more clearly. Some weeds in there. Okay, and also from the front side you can see through the trunks, and there's space behind them, so it's not, you know, that wall of foliage at the back, and they start to look more like a tree because, you know, most trees don't have the foliage drooping right down to the ground. So we're going to continue to clean up all these lower leaves, and we'll check in when that's done. Okay, so I finished removing all the leaves that are hanging down close to the ground. See, if you spin it around, you can see it's a little more open. You can see the trunks all the way around. The back's a little lower, which is fine. It's still got some space here. And we've left our little shoot there that'll turn into a tree trunk eventually. The next thing we're going to do is, we're not going to touch the main tree, but on all the other trunks we're going to look for vertical growth or strong growth and prune it back. So we want to equalize the vigor. So these side branches here that are growing but not really strongly, we're going to leave them alone. But up here, I hope you can see this, up here we've got quite a bit of new growth. You can see the new growth is green, and that gets bark on it as it gets older. So this new green growth, it's getting quite long and vigorous, so we want to cut that back. And from every point we cut the new growth, we hopefully get more branching, and usually you do. Usually you get 2 or 3 branches coming out from the cut point. And again, you can directional prune. Even the places where there's no leaves, you can see where the leaf was. It leaves a little sort of brown scar. So you can prune, and at the base of each leaf or each former leaf, it'll potentially sprout out from there. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go in and cut some of the vigorous ones, and I'll show you the first few cuts, and then I'll finish the process. So here's a close-up of some of the more vigorous branches. So what we want to do is prune them off to maybe, leave a 10mm stub or something. So here we go. I'm going to get the pruners. And we're going to go in there and prune it. There we go. So there's our piece we pruned off. And there's where we pruned it too. And you can see there is a leaf back here that's growing inside the tree, which we can also remove. And we'll do that. Let me get my scissors here. We'll come in and take that out too. So anything you can do to thin the canopy, leaves that are growing inside towards the center can be removed. There's another one here, for instance. Remove that because it's not, all it's doing is creating shadows in the canopy. And we're after ramification, so we want to give all these places we just cut as much light as possible so then they can sprout new growth. And if they have lots of sun, they'll get buds all over it. Okay, so I'm going to go in now and I'm going to do that process to each branch, again not touching the main tree, and we'll have a look at it when it's all done. So in the process of pruning, if you look down here, there's a branch that's kind of going the wrong direction. It's cutting across into the other trunk, and there's a nice shoot coming out. It should be fanning radially from the group planting. So we want to get rid of that. So we'll just take it right off there, like so. Where'd it go? Right here. Yeah. So I've got a lot of it cleaned up now. There's still a few shoots, like here's another one. If you look down here, it's crossing this other trunk and it's not really useful to the design. We want them to fan out from the trunk, not come in and cross each other. So we're going to get rid of that one too. So we'll come in here. There it goes. So we're getting there. There's a leaf that's kind of crossing inside here that we can get rid of. So again, your goal is to get light to all your pruning points, because if these pruning points get light, they'll grow new branches and you get more ramification. So we're looking at the main trunk here, and again, we're not going to prune it. We're just going to let that grow to try and thicken that up even more. So we're kind of getting down, just pruning some of the leaves that are not necessary here. They're kind of crossing and shading out other things. There's another one here we can get rid of. Yeah, so just remove any leaves that are kind of shading out the ones below. Get rid of that one too. Now normally in fall, or not in fall, about midwinter, January, February, because this plant is inside for the winter, and the sun starts getting stronger in usually about February, let's say. I generally defoliate the entire tree and then go in and look at the structure and do some hard pruning, just to sort the structure out, because you'll get buds that grow inside and they're weak, and you know, you want to, your overall structure of your trunks, you want to keep them flowing so they're not too contorted looking. You know, like for instance this one here, we've got a strong branch going out the front that's kind of crossing the main trunk back here. It's not too bad. I mean, if you had every branch like a perfect fan, it would just look artificial. So you want some interesting character to it. So, you know, we don't just want a clump coming out and everything perfectly fanning out. It would just wouldn't look right. So it's okay to have some crossing trunks and stuff in a clump style. You know, you're not after that immaculate artificial look. So we're getting down there. There's still some of these older leaves I can prune off. So I'm just going to go through it again and take some of these some of these leaves from the main trunk. I can prune some of the lower ones off to get a little more light down below, but still keep the vigor up top on the main tree. So I'm going to keep doing that, and we'll be back. Okay, so I've all the new growth on the main tree that we're not touching the growing tips, I thinned it back to you know, 3 or 4 leaves. So I've removed all the older leaves on the branch, which gives a little more light to the interior of the tree. And yeah, so we're just going to let that continue to grow, and everything else is being thinned out. So the next step is we're going to clean up the moss. It's growing a little long. Some of these roots, it was planted a little deeper than it, well, the soil was mounted up a little higher than it should be, and that was because I did a bit of root pruning near the surface, and I was getting new roots to grow on the surface. So we can rake some of that soil off the root base to make more of a level ground plane. We'll prune the moss, and we'll remove. You can see there's some moss that's growing in on top of the roots here. We want to get rid of that to create a nice clean root base. So we'll do that. So when removing the moss, I just use tweezers, and I go in and I just pull the moss off like that. And I hope I'm in focus here because I'm zoomed in kind of close. So you just pick away at it. It comes off fairly easily. So for this tree, because it has such a dense canopy, you want to have the moss around the edges of the pot and no moss underneath the tree. And that gives the impression of shade. That nothing grows under the shaded part of the tree, especially moss, which is, you know, generally looks like grass in a bonsai tree. So under a big shade tree like this, you wouldn't have grass growing underneath it. So that's why we're removing all this moss. And the moss covers up the roots, and you want to be able to see all these twisty roots. Yeah. So you just work away at it like so. Okay, so I've gone in and cleaned up the root base. You can see Scheffleras get really nice roots. If you like, you know, tropical trees, banyan style trees, these are definitely the trees to grow. They're really easy to grow. They can look fantastic as they get old. You might want to check out a website. David at Schefflera Bonsai in Hawaii is probably, you know, one of the world experts in growing these trees. He does have an ideal environment for growing them in Hawaii. In Canada, it's a little different, but you know, what can you do? Again, yeah. So there's the roots. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up the moss. So again, I showed you on another video. If we look over here, the moss is getting quite high, and it's kind of getting quite loose. So again, we just get our curved scissors. These are surgical scissors, and we just prune it off, just like cutting your lawn. And you kind of be careful not to pull it out. If you do, you can just push it down and it'll keep growing. Here we go. And that keeps your moss nice and trim. It doesn't get thick and bushy. Oh, see? Okay, so we're going to do that, and we'll be back. Okay, so I've got the moss pruned up. It's shorter. Looks a lot more like grass now. Pruning the moss can actually kind of change the scale of the tree a bit. If you have nice tight moss like that, it makes the tree look larger. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to give the tree a good watering. Just like so. Now the soil's fairly dry, especially in some areas where I had trouble getting in because there's so much foliage. So you can see it's pooling up on some of the mossy areas here, so we'll let that soak in and water it in stages. So we'll let that soak in and give it another watering until it's running out the drainage holes. So Schefflera, the roots don't like to be constantly wet. What you want to do is water it thoroughly and then let it almost dry out. Not bone dry, but until it starts looking dry on the surface of the soil, and then water it thoroughly again. So we'll keep watering here. Make sure you get all areas of the pot. Wash off the new areas of the roots there. You can sing your song, I'll make it rain, I'll make it rain. I'll let that soak in again. Wash the front of the pot off here. Sort of. I'll let that soak in for a little longer, and then we'll give it another one. So you can see the tree looks kind of funny right now. Actually, I'm just gonna take off this leaf too. And this one. And this one. And this one. That one can stay. That one can stay. That one can stay. Yeah, it doesn't look like it has a canopy anymore, but that'll quickly grow back in. And when I do prune this main tree in fall, before I bring it indoors again, it'll quickly sprout again because it's going to have so much vigor that it just catches right back up with the other foliage. It just comes out very quickly. And then we'll get our canopy again. And I'll probably prune this probably late in summer. So I'm hoping to develop the canopy before winter comes. Okay, so that's about all the work we're going to do on the tree today. I'll just spin it around. Yeah. So there we go. I'll just end with a little bit of philosophy. 90% of work in bonsai is doing little things. You'll see a lot of videos on YouTube where there's a dramatic transformation from a tree that's being dug up from the wild and dramatic styling. Most of bonsai work isn't doing that type of thing. It's little things, pruning branches, positioning branches, and over the years, all the fine detail work that you do to a tree just makes the tree get better and better. Some of the trees you dig up, they might have a big fantastic trunk, but I don't know, sometimes there's a lot of design flaws in them that are very hard to solve and fix. And if you grow a tree from younger and you do the right things and have a sort of a design vision in mind, you can get a superior tree in the end. It does take a long time, so don't expect overnight results from any of your trees. I've been growing bonsai trees for 21 years now, and a lot of my trees aren't anywhere close to their final styling and refinement. It's a thing, it takes a lot of years to even learn how to take care of the trees, keep them alive, how to prune them, when to prune them. So, I'm always learning, and I'm sure everyone else in bonsai is. You learn with experience. And yeah, so that's my philosophy for today. So that's all we're going to do for the tree for now, and we'll give updates on the tree as time goes on. So, Nigel Saunders for KW Bonsai. We'll see you next time. Bye.